Emily has 2 glasses filled with water. In the first glass, the water is heated up to 100 degrees. In the second glass, the water is cooled down to minus 100 degrees. The girl drops 2 coins in the glasses at the same time. Which coin will reach the bottom faster? It'll be the coin in the glass with the warm water. The coin in the other glass won't sink at all. The water there is frozen. Brandon's wife told him to cook several eggs, but the man had to boil them for exactly 2 minutes. She left her husband 3 hourglass timers for 3, 4, and 5 minutes. How can the man boil the eggs for exactly 2 minutes? Brandon waited until the water started to boil. Then he turned over the 3 and 5 minute timers. When the 3-minute timer ran out, he dropped the eggs into the water. And when the 5-minute timer ran out, he had his perfectly boiled eggs. It was the first time Eric sailed his brand new yacht. But the man seemed to be out of luck that day. A bad storm sank the yacht, and Eric hardly had any time to make it to the surface. Half conscious, he ended up on some beach. In the morning, the man realized he was stranded on a tiny, uninhabited island. No radio, no cell phone, no means of communication whatsoever, and the island had no trees to make a smoke signal. On the 3rd day, Eric noticed a small plane circling in the sky over the island. Were they searching for him? But the aircraft was flying too high, and the pilot couldn't see Eric. And still, the man did something, and soon he was picked up by a rescue helicopter. How did he attract the pilot's attention? Eric picked up some stones and used them to write SOS on the sand. Jacob and his brother Jack were walking along the street. When they passed a grocery store, Jacob pointed at a young woman and exclaimed, "Oh, my niece is over there." His brother answered, "Oh, right, but it's not my niece." "How come?" The young woman is Jack's daughter. Amy went on holiday to the seaside and met 3 guys there. They were friends, but it didn't stop all of them from trying to impress the girl. In the evening, they all met in a restaurant to have dinner, and the guys started to tell Amy about their adventures. Sam boasted, "I'm a pilot, and I've already traveled all over the world." Larry said, "I once took part in an expedition to the North Pole. It was amazing. I saw penguins and polar bears." Jerry barged in, "And I'm an astronaut. When I was in space last time, I went on a spacewalk. I wanted to see our planet from above, but I was almost blown away by a strong wind." Who's lying to make a better impression? Both Larry and Jerry are lying. Penguins live near the South Pole, and there's no wind in outer space. It's an almost perfect vacuum. One day, Christopher decided he had to develop his logical thinking skills. The guy found a tutor and started visiting him to have private lessons. But this teacher had one interesting habit. Closer to the end of each lesson, he always gave Christopher several riddles. The guy wasn't allowed to go home until he solved them. This Friday, the first riddle went like this. How can you make 6 into an odd number? Tricky. How? He removed the letter S and got IX. That's 9 in Roman numerals. But the guy knew it was just the beginning. The next riddle was even more difficult. It's thin, but when water splashes it, none seeps through. When hit, it changes color. It covers an incredibly complex thing, yet it's very easy to flex. What is it? At first, Christopher didn't have any idea. Duh, he'd have to stay and crack riddles till midnight. Luckily, in a moment, it dawned on him. It's the skin. Christopher's tutor was impressed with the guy's progress. "Okay," he said, "one more riddle and you can go home." 3 doctors said that Ryan was their brother, but Ryan claimed he didn't have any brothers. Who was lying? Christopher figured out right away that everyone was telling the truth. All the doctors were Ryan's sisters. Whew, he could finally go home. David and his wife Jessica moved to another town. The place wasn't big. For the locals, new people coming to live there was a big deal. That's why, the next day, the couple's curious neighbors came to say hello. Karen introduced herself and said she was sure they'd become great friends. She had even cooked cupcakes for David and Jessica. Elderly Mrs. Latham told the newcomer she'd been living in the town for almost 80 years. Betty was extremely excited. A man's come to live in our small town. And so good-looking at that. Awesome news! Two of the neighbors seemed a bit creepy, and only one looked normal. Who was it? Karen had decorated her cupcakes with something that looked suspiciously like eyes. Betty is too enthusiastic about David. As for Mrs. Latham, she is sure to know lots of things about the town and its inhabitants. She can be a useful source of information, and she cooked them some soup. Faster you run, the harder it is to catch this thing. What is it? It's your breath. A famous scientist went missing. The last time his colleagues saw him, he was in his laboratory. When the police arrived, they found a calendar lying on the man's table. There were several numbers written in pencil at the bottom: 6, 4, 9, 10, 11. The police officers had 5 suspects: David, Sarah, Jason, Betty, and Kevin. Who is behind the scientist's disappearance? It's Jason. The numbers stand for months, and the first letter of each month spells the name of the criminal. So the 6th month is June, and the first letter of June is J. The 4th month is April, and the first letter of April is A, and so on. Smarty pants. The morning after a heavy snowfall, Justin went outside and stopped in his tracks. He saw there was twice as much snow on top of his garage as there was on his neighbor's. Still, Justin didn't get surprised or upset. Why? Justin's garage is twice as big as his neighbor's. No wonder it also has twice as much snow. Andrew and Gary are twins. They were born just 1 minute apart, and Andrew is the elder of the two. But for some mysterious reason, they celebrate their birthdays 2 days apart once every several years. How is this possible? Andrew was born at 11:59 p.m. on February 28. It wasn't a leap year. So Gary, who appeared just 1 minute later, was already born on March 1st. That's why, during leap years, they have 2 days between their birthdays. Ashley had a boyfriend, Mark, who was madly in love with her. Unfortunately, the woman didn't love him back. Once, she decided to leave him. Ashley knew Mark wouldn't let her go easily, so she ran away. But Mark was a very rich man and could find her almost anywhere. She had to be careful. 1 week later, Ashley was sitting in her hotel room when she heard a knock at the door. When the woman opened the door, she saw a man. She had never met him before. The stranger apologized. "Oops, I'm sorry, my bad. I was sure it was my room." He then turned around, went down the corridor, and disappeared in the elevator. Ashley rushed back into her room and started to pack her things. She instantly knew Mark had found her. How did she figure it out? No one will knock on their own hotel room door. It was Mark's man who was looking for her. Private Detective Deborah was doing some shopping at the mall. Suddenly, she heard people arguing. The woman went there and saw a stressed shop assistant and several people crowding him. The poor man had found a smartphone and made an announcement, and now several people claimed it was their phone. One man said the phone must have slipped from his bag. A young woman said the gadget belonged to her, and an older woman shouted it was her husband's device. That's when the phone rang. For some reason, the shop assistant handed it to Deborah. The woman glanced at the screen and immediately gave the phone to the man. How did she understand whose device it was? Deborah saw the word wife written on the screen. Helen lives in Singapore with her husband Dennis. Once, she tells her husband she wants to visit her aunt who lives in Italy. Dennis doesn't mind, but he asks his wife to send him a photo as soon as she gets to Europe. When Helen lands in Rome, she sends Dennis a selfie. Under the picture, she writes, "Ciao from Italy, I've just arrived." After looking at the photo, Dennis realizes his wife lied to him. How did he know? In the picture, the clock on the wall shows exactly the same time as the clock in the kitchen, which is in Singapore. If Helen was in Rome, the clock would show a big time difference.